The ocean was furious that evening, roaring like it had something to prove. The sky had turned a bruised shade of purple, and the waves were crashing against the shore with a violence that made even the lifeguards nervous. Most people had already left the beach, running for their cars as the storm rolled in. But Daniel Harper stayed. He always stayed. Because when you're a single father with a 7-year-old daughter waiting at home, you learn that life doesn't pause for bad weather. You finish your shift, you earn your pay, you go home. That was when he saw her. A flash of white in the dark water, a hand barely visible, disappearing beneath a wave. For a split second, he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. Then the scream came, swallowed by thunder. Without thinking, Daniel ran straight into the raging sea. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of one brave decision to change a life forever, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The water was ice cold and merciless. Waves slammed into Daniel's chest, trying to push him back to shore. But he had faced worse storms than this. He had faced hospital corridors at 3 a.m., holding his wife's hand as machines beeped their final rhythm. He had faced the silence of an empty side of the bed. He had faced his daughter Emma asking why mommy wasn't coming home. Compared to that, the ocean was just water. He dove under the next wave and saw her clearly this time, a woman struggling to stay afloat, her movements frantic but weakening. Her hair clung to her face, her dress heavy with seawater. She wasn't just caught in the tide, she was seconds away from disappearing. Daniel reached her just as another wave crashed over them both. She clawed at him in panic, nearly dragging him under, but he held firm. Years of training kicked in. He turned her, secured her under his arm, and began fighting his way back to shore. Every step felt impossible. The undertow tried to steal them. The wind howled. His lungs burned. For a moment, fear crept in, not for himself, but for Emma. What would happen to her if he didn't make it back? That thought gave him strength. With one final surge, he broke through the shallows and dragged the woman onto the wet sand. She wasn't breathing. Daniel dropped to his knees and began CPR. The storm raged around them, but he focused on the rhythm. Compress. Breathe. Compress. Breathe. He refused to let her story end here. After what felt like an eternity, she coughed. Water spilled from her lips as she gasped for air. Relief hit him so hard his hands trembled. She was alive. Paramedics arrived minutes later, rushing her onto a stretcher. As they loaded her into the ambulance, her eyes fluttered open for just a second. They locked onto Daniel's face, confused, dazed, but undeniably alive. He didn't know it then, but that look would change everything. Daniel went home soaked and exhausted. Emma was asleep on the couch, a blanket tangled around her small body. He carried her to bed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She stirred and whispered that she loved him. He whispered it back. The next morning his life went back to normal, or what passed for normal. Packing lunches, braiding Emma's hair badly but trying his best, fixing the leaky faucet in their tiny rental house, checking his phone for extra construction shifts. There was no sign that anything extraordinary had happened. Until 3 days later, a black SUV pulled up outside his house. Daniel thought it was a mistake. Men in tailored suits stepped out, scanning the modest neighborhood like they had landed on another planet. One of them approached his door and knocked. When Daniel opened it, the man introduced himself as a personal assistant. The woman he had rescued wanted to see him. Daniel almost laughed. He assumed she just wanted to say thank you, maybe offer a reward he would politely refuse. He had saved her because it was the right thing to do, not because he expected anything. But when he arrived at the private hospital wing downtown, reality shifted. The woman from the ocean was not ordinary. Her name was Victoria Hale, and she was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country, founder of a global tech empire, investor, philanthropist. A face that had graced magazine covers and business headlines. Daniel stared at the news articles displayed on a tablet the assistant handed him. He had pulled a billionaire from the waves. When he entered her hospital room, she was sitting upright, pale but composed. Without the chaos of the storm, she looked powerful, even vulnerable in a quiet way. Her eyes softened when she saw him. Gratitude filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. She told him that she had gone for a private walk along the beach to escape the pressure of her life. The security detail had been dismissed for the evening. She had underestimated the storm. By the time she realized her mistake, the tide had taken her. She said that when she lost consciousness, she was certain she was going to die, and the last thing she remembered was a pair of determined eyes refusing to let her go. Daniel shrugged it off, uncomfortable with the attention. He said anyone would have done the same. But she shook her head. Not everyone runs toward danger. From that day on, something unexpected began to grow. Victoria insisted on visiting the small beach town once she was discharged. At first, it was to thank him properly. Then it was to donate funds to improve beach safety. Then it was simply to see Emma, who had instantly adored the elegant woman who listened carefully to her stories about school and helped her build sandcastles without caring that her designer clothes got dirty. Daniel tried to keep his distance. Their worlds were galaxies apart. She traveled by private jet. He worried about grocery bills. She attended charity galas. He attended parent-teacher meetings. But the more time they spent together, the more those differences blurred. Victoria was tired of people loving her wealth instead of her heart. Daniel didn't even own a suit that fit properly. Around him, she felt human, unfiltered, safe. And around her, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt since losing his wife, hope. Yet fear lingered. The media eventually discovered their connection. Headlines exploded. Photos of Victoria laughing on a public beach with a construction worker and his daughter spread across social media. Speculation turned cruel. People accused Daniel of chasing money. They questioned his intentions. They painted him as a gold digger who had orchestrated the rescue. Daniel wanted to walk away. He had worked too hard to build a stable life for Emma to let gossip destroy it. He didn't want her to grow up reading hateful comments about her father. One night, after another wave of online attacks, he sat alone in his kitchen. The small house felt even smaller under the weight of doubt. Victoria arrived unexpectedly. She had seen the news too. She told him that she could end it all with one statement. She could shut down the rumors. She could protect him. But Daniel surprised her. He said the only thing that mattered was whether they knew the truth. He had saved her because it was right. He cared for her because she was kind. If the world couldn't see that, it was the world's problem. For the first time in a long time, Victoria cried, not from fear, but from relief. She wasn't falling for a hero. She was falling for a man. Months passed. The storm that had brought them together felt like a distant memory, yet it remained the foundation of everything. Victoria began funding community projects in Daniel's town, not flashy investments but real improvements. A new playground, scholarships, a small clinic named after Daniel's late wife. Daniel continued working, refusing to abandon the life that shaped him. He wanted Emma to understand that love wasn't about money or status. It was about showing up. The proposal was simple. No grand stage, no cameras. Just the three of them on the same beach where the ocean had nearly stolen her life. Victoria told Daniel that the storm had taken her fear of death and replaced it with a fear of living without meaning. He had shown her what real strength looked like, not in boardrooms, but in ordinary courage. Daniel looked at Emma, who was pretending not to listen but smiling too wide to hide her excitement. He said yes. Their wedding was small and private, despite what the tabloids wanted. Victoria signed a prenuptial agreement that protected Daniel's peace of mind more than her fortune. She made it clear that he was her partner, not her project. Years later, when people asked how they met, they would smile and say it started with a storm. But what they rarely spoke about was the deeper truth. It started with a man who had already lost everything once and still chose to risk his life for a stranger, and a woman who had everything money could buy but nearly lost the one thing she didn't know she was searching for: a reason to slow down and truly live. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can change destinies and that love can arrive in the most unexpected ways, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories that restore faith in humanity. And before we end, comment the word hope if you believe one brave decision can change your life forever, because sometimes the biggest waves bring the greatest blessings. Daniel never saw himself as a hero, but every time he watched Victoria and Emma laughing together under a calm golden sunset, he knew one thing for certain. On the night the ocean tried to take her, he hadn't just saved a billionaire. He had saved a future he never imagined possible. and in doing so, he found the courage to love again.